The gray clouds had first gathered as she'd come down the landing steps of the sleek jet, which had brought her in less than 2 hours from her native Boston to Halifax in northeastern Canada. A bride of only a few days, Laura Cameron had worried that this introduction to the foreign land in which she would be making her home might be considered an omen, an ill omen. The wind that early day in May had been bitterly cold, and she had drawn her cloth coat with its heavy fur collar closely about her. Donald, her new husband, had warned her the weather would be more rugged in Nova Scotia, and so she had been persuaded to wear the brown tweed coat. The cold and the cloudy skies had combined to give her a pang of homesickness and a feeling of uneasiness. She had turned to glance back at her husband and found scant hint of understanding in the solemn face of the tall, dark-haired man to whom she'd so recently entrusted her future. She had always been led to think that Scotch people had dour, withdrawn dispositions, but she had never noticed this in Donald Cameron until after their marriage. Until then, he had been an amusing, carefree companion, not noticeably different from the other Boston young men whom she had dated. But within 24 hours after the wedding, this weird transformation had taken place in him. She could not decide whether it had shown first when he'd received the wire from home, the wire he would not let her see, or if it had started at the modest wedding reception at the Sheridan Plaza Hotel when her Aunt Alice had reprimanded him for taking her back to Canada so soon. She hadn't blamed Donald for resenting her aunt's comment and knew that the older woman had merely used this as an excuse to vent her wrath on him. She didn't like him. Laura's brief glimpse of her husband, as she had looked over her shoulder at him on the landing steps, had made her wonder uneasily if her Aunt Alice might have been close to the truth when she had dubbed him a tight-fisted, dour opportunist, ready to marry any American girl with enough money who would have him. Of course, this had been the bitter opinion of a spinster losing her favorite niece, and it had been completely unfair to Donald to even have thought it. So she had pushed the nagging doubt out of her mind on the 4-hour bus trip that took them from the gray old fortress city of Halifax to the highlands of Cape Breton, the Scotland of the North American continent. Laura had heard so much about it that she had found herself eagerly staring out the bus window at the rugged rural country, its ribbon of a road winding high in the hills and skirting the cliffs with the white beaches far below. A land of evergreens, great rocks, and the blue sea. Donald had become more like his former self on the bus trip, pointing out places of interest along the way and telling her how long it would be before they would reach the town of Glengarry and Cameron Castle. It had thrilled her to think she would actually be living in a castle more than 100 years old, and she had looked forward to her first view of it with growing anticipation. Donald's sensitive, handsome face had glowed as he told her about it, and she had begun to think that all would be well again. Glengarry had turned out to be a cluster of gray frame-wood houses along a main street, and little more. There were a few stores and a post office, which also served as a bus stop. It was there that Graham, the estate manager, had met them. He was a man about Donald's size and age, with a sandy complexion and the same solemn cast of countenance. When they were introduced, he had shown a minimum of enthusiasm and had quickly gathered their bags, put them in the trunk of the car, and chauffeured them along the narrow, paved road that twisted its way up the coast to Cameron Castle. Now she stood on the lawn outside the impressive stone building with its forbidding gray towers and ivy-covered wings. Its very size and bleak appearance served to make her feel more insecure. She did not feel equal to being the mistress of such a mansion. It was close to 5 hours since she had set foot in Canada at the distant airport of Halifax. All during that time, the sun had been blotted out by the grim array of clouds, and Donald's handsome young face had been almost as grim as the afternoon. She was certain that he loved her. His embraces and kisses had not lessened in their ardor,